Welcome to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking to my ball. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Tuesday, April the 1st. I am your host, Mike Oliva, joined today by Dante Collinelli from right here at DolphinsTalk.com and also Sports Illustrated and the 33rd team. Dante's got a ton of jobs. And we're going to break down it's part two of our draft preview show, as we will break down the offensive line and the wide receiver position. And we're also going to start, and we will also talk a little bit about Calais Campbell as well, because that's a little bit of breaking news. Dante, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Offensive line and the Dolphins, always a good time. You know, just never any problems up there.
Never any problems there. Never. It's just one of those things where we as fans, we're more worried about it than they are half the time. But all joking aside, we're going to talk about that. And, of course, we'll probably even have a couple of Liam Weichenberg mentions as well. But before we get to that, quick shout-out to the sponsor of today's show, Caneswear. Everyone go to caneswear.com for the best Miami Dolphins apparel on the internet. If you need a Miami Dolphins jacket, jersey, hoodie, hat, sweatshirt, golf shirt, polo, go to caneswear.com. They have the most affordable and the best Miami Dolphins apparel on the internet. So you're going to want to check that out there. They also have stuff for the Miami Heat, the Florida Panthers, the Miami Marlins, and of course the Miami Hurricanes, Florida Gators, Florida State. They got all the colleges covered, but especially Miami Dolphins stuff. It's the most affordable, best gear. So caneswear.com. Also, Dolphins Talk Extra. If you like this show, we got bonus podcasts. Some about the Dolphins, some not. We got a private message board. We give away prizes and contests. $3 a month. Patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. And we're also running a contest right now for everybody. You want to win one of these cool, if you're watching on YouTube, Miami Dolphins 2025 official NFL draft hats. All you got to do is go to our Apple Podcast page, leave us a 5-star rating, write a positive, keywords positive review, take a screenshot. That's right, Dante, it's got to be positive. Take a screenshot and email it to DolphinsTalk1977@gmail.com. You'll be entered in the contest, and I will pick a winner on April 7th. So check that out there. Before we get to the draft talk, a little bit of Miami Dolphins news we have to discuss at the top of the show. Calais Campbell made a decision, and he did not walk up to Chris Greer and say, "Will you accept this rose?" He went to the Arizona Cardinals and said, "Will you accept this rose?" And he signed a one-year deal, or he's about to sign a one-year deal for $5.5 million, worth up to $7.5 million with incentives. And the Dolphins right now are up Schitt's Creek when it comes to the defensive line, because they lost Hand, now they lost Campbell, and yes, they re-signed Benito Jones. I don't know if that gets anyone all excited, and all they have is Zach Sealer. Now, I know the draft is loaded on the defensive line, but counting on rookies heading into the season, probably not the best bet. There's still a couple guys not signed, like John Jenkins is out there. Who else? I have the names. I forgot them right now. I'm drawing a blank. Who's some of the other ones, Dante? You remember? John Jenkins was one. Linval Joseph was another. And Zadarius, what's his last name?
Smith?
Smith. Yeah, he's out there as well. So there's guys to sign, but it's now with Campbell leaving, Miami will get, or should get, a 4th-round compensatory pick next year. Is Chris Greer going to want to possibly lose that pick by signing someone, or at least say, screw it, let's just go to the draft and we'll see if we'll sign someone like in the summer? What are your thoughts, Dante?
Yeah, so I don't know if you feel the same, but my concern is less with whether or not Calais Campbell was going to play on the Miami Dolphins this year. And so far as what he brings to the table, he brings a lot to the table. He was a really good football player for them last year. I think what he does for you in the locker room is also really important. My problem is that you put yourself in a position to where you are reliant on a player who is still good in Calais Campbell, but is 39 years old. He's been doing the 1-year contract mercenary thing for a little bit now, which is totally his prerogative. He's at the end of his career. I don't blame him. I'd probably be doing the same damn thing. And so, but you put yourself in a position to where you are reliant not only on that player on the field, but off the field. And that to me, how you get to that part of the team building process at a position like the interior defensive line, which is incredibly important. That is not, this is not linebacker. This is not running back. This is the core of your defense. And you have Zach Sealer, who's a budding star, a player who probably should have multiple Pro Bowl appearances at this point, but does not. And you have failed to adequately replace Christian Wilkins. And then you have now failed to construct a room that can sustain a loss of a 39-year-old player who realistically played less than 50% of the snaps in a lot of games last year. That, to me, is the problem. It's less about, can the Dolphins field a defensive line group that isn't terrible next season? Because they can. The guys will get cut. There will be new free agents. The draft, I watched 22 of these guys, and I have like 24th round grades. There's plenty of dudes. I'm not at the point where I'm panicking about the interior defensive line room. It's freaking April 1st. I'm not in that mode. Call me in July and we'll take a look and we'll see. My problem, my hesitation is you should not be in this position. There's no version of this where you should be in the spot to where you are reliant on a 39-year-old player at the end of his career as the entire crux for one of the most important positions on your football team. Why are we in this spot? That's my question, right? It's you shouldn't get this far. Why didn't you re-sign Deshaun Hand? Chargers ain't paying him nothing. What? There's other guys. They had, last year, as much as I had to gripe with the fact that they didn't adequately replace Christian Wilkins, at least they threw a bunch of stuff at the wall. You know what I mean? And some of it
signed 6 guys. Yeah. Really only kept 1, but they signed
some
6
of it
guys.
Stuck, some of it didn't. But guys like Tahir Tart went to the Chargers and had a nice year. Huh? Could have went back and got him. No, there was some character stuff there, and maybe he didn't want to come back. Blah blah blah. Whatever. Right? You insert name here. The name itself is irrelevant. There are guys that you could have gone out there and signed who didn't play on your football team last year and who did play on your football team last year that would put you in a position to where you're not so reliant on Calais Campbell making whatever decision he's going to make. That, to me, is the frustrating part about this. I think Calais Campbell's a good football player. He is very replaceable on the field. There are 10 guys in the draft that I think can give you some version of what Calais Campbell gave you last year. But you should not be in the position to where you are so reliant on this player to make this decision for you.
Yeah, I'm with you. I actually spent all last night writing an article criticizing the Miami Dolphins for saying, why have you put your offseason on pause here, waiting for a 39, which he will be September 1st, year-old man who's going to give you limited snaps, who is just dragging his feet up until this afternoon, at least it seemed like it was. Go out there and sign a couple people, because if he's looking around for teams where he's got a chance to win a ring, which clearly wasn't the case signing with Arizona. It was a money grab, which I have no problem with. He's entitled. Take the money. Take the money. You put his body through hell, take the money. But it's like, if you want him to come back here, make it enticing at least. Sign a couple of these guys like a John Jenkins. I don't know. I'm like, how much is that going to cost you? Not much. It's a 1-year deal. And it's like, they didn't do anything. And now, yes, I'm with you. I am not sad that he's not here because I think they are quietly rebuilding. They just won't say it publicly because they need fans to show up, buy tickets, buy food, and all that good stuff. But they're quietly rebuilding it. I mean, they've done nothing this offseason. And this roster, as of today, prior to the draft, is worse than the one that ended the season last year. And I will argue that to the death with anyone who wants to. But the point is, they put themselves in this because now, like you said, most of the guys are gone. Like someone like Sheldon Rankins. Is Sheldon Rankins some great? He signed a 1-year deal up to $7 million. It's not even 7, up to $7 million. Guys like that were out there for pretty much the same money as Campbell. Younger, could have given you a little bit more. Hand signed a 1-year deal up to $3.35 million. Hell, if they would have gave him that deal, he'd probably start this year for Miami. There's guys like that. Greg, I'm sitting here looking at a list of interior linemen who signed cheap one-year deals. They're gone. That cupboard is not totally bare. It's kind of almost bare. And
But
because now that they're going to get this 4th-round compensatory pick, the 3 or 4 guys that might be worth signing, they're probably going to wait till May 1st because you probably, at this point, why risk losing the compensatory pick, which I don't care about that stuff, but I know he does, and that's fine. But let's see how many of these guys are still there after the draft, because now that Campbell signed, a couple of teams that were in on him, like the Ravens, are probably going to scoop 1 or 2 of these guys up right now, and they're not going to wait till May 1st because they don't care about this stuff. They want to win. So, yeah, it's not that he's gone, Campbell. I'm fine with him being gone. It's just, this is how you go 25 years without winning a playoff game, which I feel like I say a lot. You make stupid decisions. You put yourself in a stupid situation to where now in the draft at pick 13, are you truly drafting the best player available? Or are you like, screw it, we got to get a defensive tackle who can start week 1? And that might be where they are. Like, let's watch who falls. Like, we got to take Grant, which is not a bad pick because I like Grant, or Walter Nolan, or whoever. But it's like, if someone falls in their lap, I don't know.
We can save this for the D-line show. I don't think they're going to take an interior player at 13.
He doesn't value it. He doesn't value the position.
I don't think so. Now, I did a mock draft today where I had Kenneth Grant going there, but that's my opinion, right? Like, that would be, if I was Chris Greer, that would be the pick I would make. That was not a predictive mock. That was hey, here's a thing that could happen. I'm not saying there's a 0% chance. I don't think they're going to, because the other thing too, you have to look at, and again, like this, we can save this for next week. There really is only one option, at least in my opinion, at that pick. It's Kenneth Grant. Right, like we can sit here and talk about Derek Harmon.
Unless Mason Graham falls in her lap.
Right, well, I'm just assuming Graham's off the board, right? So Graham's gone. I personally do not value Walter Nolan and Derek Harmon that high, which would be like the next guys. I think those, if you trade back, you can talk me into those picks, but like I am not taking Walter Nolan 13th overall. It's Kenneth Grant or bust, and like, I don't know. I think the 49ers could take him. I think the Cowboys could take him. I think the Bears could take him. I think the Saints could take him at 9. I think they could talk themselves into him being the best player available depending on what they do and blah, blah, blah. I don't know that that's going to be the pick. So, like, I think Dolphins fans need to be prepared for them to maybe draft, like, one guy in the middle rounds, sign someone on, May 1st or May 2nd or whatever it ends up being, and then that's the D-tackle room.
Until the last week of August when all these other teams start making cuts, and they'll probably pick up a couple of guys that you're going to be like, really him? And that's what they're going to do. So God bless Anthony Weaver. God bless him. He's probably he's really wishing he got that Saints job right now, I'm sure. Looking at what this line's going to look like this year, what he's got to work with.
I don't know if I'd want the Saints job.
I don't know if I want either, but I don't know if I'd want to work with this line. And teams are going to put 2 guys on Zach Sealer all season, and it's going to be a disaster for him. But I'm with you because I think at 13, what we've seen from Chris Greer in recent years, round 1, the 5 premium spots, which are offensive tackle, quarterback, which he won't do, obviously, wide receiver, which he won't do, but then edge rusher, corner. Corner is in play totally. I think offensive tackle's in play, which is going to drive fans nuts because it's going to be like, are we not going to give Patrick Paul a chance, or are we going to move someone to offensive guard, which we'll talk about today, who's never played the position before? I mean, that's going to drive some fans nuts. But all right, is what it is. Yeah, I know. I'm right there with you, and that's where we're going to start at offensive tackle. Because I like this class. I just don't think Miami needs to be in it, at least in round 1. So let's just start here. If Miami went offensive tackle in round 1, pick 13, assume they just sit there and they take their offensive tackle. 1 year after you took Patrick Paul in round 2, and after you just recently paid Austin Jackson and then restructured his deal, a pretty good contract, would you be upset? I know it's yes. Tell me why.
So I don't know if, okay. It's very player dependent for me. Yep. If they draft Will Campbell, I'm not going to complain. I think Will Campbell's very good at football.
I'm with you there.
If they draft Armand Membu, I'm not going to complain. I think he's very good at football. Sign me up. And look, I'm never going to be upset about an investment in the offensive line, right? Because it is I can talk myself into that one. It's a lot easier for me to talk myself into that than it is for me to talk myself into we talked about Ashton Genty, and I said I wouldn't be mad about that either, but that's a little bit harder for me to talk myself into. Even an offensive lineman, it's all right, this team has a million offensive line injuries. They probably drafted a talented player. Cool. The problem, why I would have to talk myself into it in the first place, why I would be maybe a little bit upset is maybe the best way to put it, is that you drafted Patrick Paul, a player that, by the way, I did not think was good coming out of Houston, and he looked playable last year. And so you're in a position now where you're going to start him at left tackle. Whatever player you draft, besides the two that I just named, you are getting a player who played only left tackle in college. And by the way, Armand Membu and Will Campbell also only played left tackle in college. So that is Kelvin Banks. That is Josh Connerly. I think Josh Connerly played like 38 guard snaps in 3 years at Oregon or something ridiculous. Josh Simmons, if they want to go with an injured player, they love those, even though his injury looks good, which is great because he's a really talented player. And I think he'd be a great scheme fit for the Dolphins. But he's a player who has only played left tackle. And you can expand that list out, right? Like there are a lot of tackles in this class that everybody just goes, they can play guard. It's not that easy. It's not that simple. And I think the other question that I try to ask myself a lot when I project a tackle to a guard is, am I saying that this player can play guard or should they play guard? Because there's a difference. Armand Membu can play guard, I think, right? Like, I'm projecting. He's never done it. I think he can play guard. If the Dolphins drafted him at 12 and you told me he was the left guard next to Patrick Paul, great. You sign me up for that. It's a projection, though. There is risk involved in that. You don't know that he can play guard. Should he play guard is the question. In my opinion, no. I think he should play tackle because he's damn good at it. And he's got the measurables and the power. And so I have to ask myself that question about Josh Simmons, about Kelvin Banks, about Josh Connerly. All of these players, should they play guard? Not can they play guard, should they play guard? The most optimal outcome for the Dolphins is that they draft a player who plays guard for one season and then goes to tackle. In that scenario, that means one of Patrick Paul or Austin Jackson is bad or injured. So in your best case scenario, you are not actually improving on the offensive line.
Or Austin Jackson, if they move on from him after this year, they might save some cap space, I think.
Right, but you would only move on from him probably if he was bad. Because probably, if he's a quality starter at left tackle, he's still young. He's not even like 30, right? He's like 26.
Yeah, he's really young, yeah.
Yeah, like you'd probably just give him another contract, right? And so that worries me. And then the other outcome here is, okay, so that player plays guard. Maybe they're good. Maybe Patrick Paul's bad. What do you do with Patrick Paul? Okay, so you kick that player out to guard. Now you've wasted the Patrick Paul pick, right? Or Patrick Paul is good at left tackle, and now you have that player who you drafted at 13th overall. Maybe he struggles at guard. Maybe that's not where he's supposed to be.
That's my problem.
Do you
wasted pick 13?
Right. Do you move Patrick Paul to right tackle where he looked god-awful his worst tape this past year was at right tackle. So to me, it creates so many problems, and I would just rather wait. I would rather sit there at 48 and draft Tate Ratledge. I would rather wait till pick 98 and draft Jonah Savania from Arizona or Miles Frazier from LSU, or I would go sign Daniel Brunskill in free agency as a hedge. And if I'm sitting there on the clock at 13th overall and Will Campbell falls into my lap, okay, I sign him. I have Daniel Brunskill on a 1-year, $4 million contract. That's not going to eat me alive at night. You know, like, and then I truly have invested in that group and I've made that group better. And so I can live with the fact that, hey, maybe things aren't optimal, but I've got a really good group of 5 guys and I'm going to figure it out and blah, blah, blah. Like, you can talk me into that. But when you're talking about forcing that pick at 13, not letting it come to you, that's where I start to get concerned about long-term fit, position flexibility, right? Because in an ideal world, it sounds great. We'll just take a tackle at 13.
Everyone's Laramie Tunsil. That's exactly the exception, not the norm.
Right. And so in a perfect world, you end up with Laramie Tunsil. In a non-perfect world, you get, I don't even know, you get a tackle you've never heard of because they didn't last in the league for a couple years.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am 100% with you. If it's like Membo or if it's Will Campbell, I get it and I won't be mad because I think they're so stinking good. You'll find a way to get them on the field. whether it's at right tackle, left tackle, and you move Austin Jackson around, or you play them 1 year at, because I think those two can translate the best to guard out of all of them.
I agree.
I have the most confidence in either one of those two moving at least for a year or two to guard, and I'd feel okay about those two. Anything after that, Kelvin Banks, I don't feel that confident.
No, I'm with you, right? And again, like I'm not saying that Kelvin Banks can't play guard. I'm saying that
risk involved. There's more risk.
More risk projecting a player that you haven't seen out of position. Like, it's just like we all just do this thing where it's like, we'll just snap our fingers and he'll play guard. And it's like, dude, that is hard. That is not an easy transition, especially if you're flipping sides of the line, which they may or may not be doing. I don't know that they've said where James Daniels is going to play, if he's going to play at right guard or left guard. It could be either. And again, like, now you have to ask that question. Are we now asking James Daniels to flip sides of the line because our rookie is uncomfortable on a certain side of the line, right? Like, there's so many moving pieces here that I think, look, if they take an offensive lineman at 13, even if it's Kelvin Banks, I'm not going to kill it. I don't think it's a bad pick. He's a good football player. They need offensive linemen. I would understand it. I'm just saying that I think that would be forcing it. I have a hard time believing that Kelvin Banks is the best player on the board at 13 in almost any scenario.
Yeah. Will Campbell and his arm length, which I think sometimes this is where some of the new age analytic stuff just gets into the minutia. It's not like he has no arms. It's not like he has little scrawny. We're talking like 5/8 of an inch. You know, I mean, we're talking, I mean, are his arms long enough to be a successful long-term offensive tackle in this league, or are you worried that his arms aren't long enough to play tackle? I know there's multiple measurements and there's multiple numbers out there. What do you think? Where are you on the arm length thing and Will Campbell?
So it's a really good question. So I have Will Campbell rated as a guard. I do. He's my top-rated guard. I don't know that it's really an arm length concern for me. I think when I watch him play, I think a lot of his worst reps are plays where he needs to protect his outside shoulder against true speed. I think when you watch a lot of his losses, they look like that. However, what I will say is if a team drafts Will Campbell and they play him at tackle, I think he'll be fine. Like, I think he'll be fine. When I do these boards, right, like when I do my board, I'm doing it for all 32 teams. So if I sit down and I say, hey, I think Will Campbell's a guard for 20 of the 32 teams, I'm going to rank him as a guard, right? Because that just makes my life easier, frankly, as a draft analyst. Like, I'm not going to sit here and make individual boards for 32 teams. Okay, I don't get paid enough money for that. I don't get paid any money for my draft work. So, you know, I'm not doing that, okay? So if I think he's a tackle for 12 teams out of 32, that is a reasonable chance that I think he'll play tackle and he'll be perfectly fine. Will Campbell's a really good prospect. He's a fringe top 10 player for me in this class. I think guard, tackle, outside zone, inside zone, gap power. Like, I think you're getting a good offensive lineman. The reason I have him rated at guard has less to do with his arm length. And to me, it's just like there are reps on tape where, like, I think guys just beat him. And he's a good athlete. So maybe you can clean that up with technique. Maybe NFL coaching makes that better. LSU's offense was not helpful for offensive linemen because they dropped back like 85 times a game in a straight drop back and like didn't really help their linemen. They kind of threw those guys into the fire, and you saw
you're going to give up sacks.
Yeah. You saw Will Campbell kind of rise to the occasion, and then you saw Emory Jones do the opposite of that on the other side at right tackle, right? So I like Campbell at guard. I like Campbell at tackle. I haven't personally rated at guard just because I think his ceiling's a little bit higher there. I think you'll see a cleaner player at that spot. But again, that is a projection. This is a player who's only played left tackle. So if a team drafts him, they want to play him at tackle, you're not going to hear me complain about it. Dude's good at football. That's it.
Josh Simmons of Ohio State, if Miami took him at 13, any concern because of the injury, or would you be like, not the guy I would take at 13, but not going to be upset either because he is a really good player. It's just he is coming off an injury here.
Yeah, that's where I would be, right? Is I don't know that I think Josh Simmons is really good. I think if you're talking about a scheme fit for the Dolphins offense, I think Josh Simmons is the best one in the class. Like, out of all of them. Interior, tackle, first round, second round, day 3, whatever. He's the best scheme fit for what the Dolphins want to do. This is a really, really good mover with really, really good power. And he's strong and he's sturdy. The injury obviously is not what you want it to be, but all indications are that his rehab is going well. He did a private workout for teams at Ohio State's Pro Day. He didn't test, but he went through some drills. Everything that I've heard and seen from that were positive, and pretty much everyone was like, I can't believe this guy's back already. Like, this is a really impressive recovery. So he seems like he's on task. I think he's a really good scheme fit. If they take him at 13, I'm not going to complain about it, but I think, again, like,
it just goes back to the question we just
right. If you take him at 13, to me, the only reason I would take Josh Simmons at 13 is because he's my franchise left tackle.
Exactly. What do you do with Patrick Paul then? Yeah, exactly. Right. Josh Cornerly Jr. of Oregon. You think he goes in round 1? Not to us, just at some point in round 1.
Yeah, I think so. I think I really like his tape. I think I'm higher on him than consensus. He's like a top 15 player for me in this class. I just think his ability to move, to mirror, to handle speed, to be an NFL athlete. I got a chance to interview him down in Mobile. I talked to him. He worked with the Dolphins assistant offensive line coach during the week. So I got a chance to talk about his fit in the scheme, and he's a really good fit. I'd say, like, if Simmons is 1, Connerly's probably 2 as far as Dolphins scheme fit goes. And I think a player with his athleticism and his ability to tackle definitely goes in round 1.
Okay. I'm going to mention him here, although I'm guessing, like me, you have him as an offensive guard. And if we do, let's just wait till we get to the guards. Gray Zabel, I know he played offensive tackle, but he's a guard, though, at the end of the day, yes. Right? Okay, we'll wait, and we'll talk about him in the next group. I'm just going to throw out some names. Just give me quick hitters on them, what you think, you like them, where you think they might go. The kid from Minnesota, whose name I'm not going to pronounce right. How do you say it, Donzie? You might know.
It's Urzuri, I think, is the last name.
I'm not going to try the first name.
Or Ezra. Yeah, it's one or the other. I haven't heard.
What are your thoughts on him? Because I've seen him go late round 1, top of round 2. You think that's his area?
I think so. I think you've got just NFL size, NFL movement skills, right? Like, those are 2 of the easiest boxes to check. He's got those. His tape is really nice. I think he's got the long arms that you want. He's got the power that you want. I'd say probably late round 1. Like, I have a hard time thinking Kansas City passes on him at 31 because, like, their offensive line's a mess. We'll talk about who's playing where problems. They'll have it worse than us if we take a guard at 13. Yeah. So I have a hard time thinking he slips past Kansas City at 31. I think the tape would merit that as well.
Charles Grant, William and Mary, which you worry about the William and Mary part and the level of competition. What are your thoughts on him?
He's fun. He's a really weird player. He's like short but long. Like, he's got like really long arms, but he's short. I think he's like 6'2", maybe 6'3" if I remember correctly. He's another player I would probably project inside to guard or center, even if I'm being completely honest. Great movement skills, really good athlete, great scheme fit for the Dolphins. They're going to like the way that he moves, the way that he can seal blocks on outside zone concepts, those reach blocks. He can get out in front and make those blocks. So I think I worry about his core strength, his ability to absorb power. Like you said, coming from William and Mary, he did not participate in the Senior Bowl. I like to see that with smaller school players. How do they handle dealing with the strength and athleticism of better competition? We didn't get to see that from Charles Grant, unfortunately. But his tape is solid. I think I have a 3rd-round grade on him. That's probably, he could go higher than that just because there might be one team that's just like, God, he's the best athlete we've ever seen. We're going to take him at top 50, which honestly, I get it, especially if it's an outside zone team, if it's a Shanahan team, like, I'd get it. But I have a 3 on him. I think he's a really solid player, but I would project him inside to guard or center.
Okay, let's talk about the other guy from the University of Texas, Cameron Williams.
So Williams is a player I think should have gone back to Texas. I was really surprised that he came out. So I have a fringe day 2, day 3 grade on him. I think the tape is not good. Like, technically, like, honestly, it's a little bit of the Patrick Paul stuff from last year, except, Paul didn't actually give up any sacks. He gave up a lot of almost sacks. Cameron Williams was giving up sacks. Like, he was getting Quinn Ewers killed a few times where he's just completely lunging and whiffing. This is not a player who understands how to time his punches, how to properly locate his hands to frame a block well. He doesn't gain depth out of his kick slide sometimes. He can overset, and then he gets beat across his face. And it's just like, but all that technical stuff, not good, bad. Great athlete, movement skills, power, really good size. He's big, he's long. He's a project. He is the NFL tools.
You don't want him playing this year, kind of like Patrick
No,
Paul.
he needs to sit. He needs to
He's
sit.
a redshirt year. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I thought he should have gone back to Texas. I was pretty surprised that he came out, but like he has everything that you can't teach a player, but you have to teach him the rest.
Yeah. Couple more names because I want to spend a little time on this spot because I do think this is a spot offensive tackle that's in play for. I mean, not only at 13, but even round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5.
Agreed.
We have a name in the chat which is actually on my list. So from Sackman, Holland Pierce, Rutgers. That's one big son of a gun right there.
He is gigantic.
He is one big son of a bitch. Have you watched anything on him?
I have him as a late day 3 guy. So I have a 6th round grade on Pierce. To me, there gets to be a certain point where being big is detrimental. He's too big. He just is. He does not move well enough to be an NFL offensive lineman. He needs to trim weight and he needs to work on his flexibility. He's incredibly stiff. This is not a player who's going to match speed. And frankly, I was a little bit underwhelmed with his run blocking. I thought if you're that big, you need to be like a steamroller. He's okay. He's not bad. But I was a little bit underwhelmed with him as a run blocker, if I'm being honest. And I can't have that for a player who's as big as he is.
University of Miami, Jalen Rivers is a name that often gets talked about. I know when it comes to University of Miami, a lot of fans of Dolphins are also fans of them. And they always say every player from Miami or the U, they want them to take. But Rivers, I don't know. I'm thinking around 3, round 4-ish. Might actually be a good pick for them.
Yeah, I'd be on board with that. I would project him inside to guard as well. I don't know that he's an NFL tackle. I think when you watch him, all of his worst reps are just like he needs to set against a speed rusher in space, and he does not have the facilities for that. But his best reps are in a phone booth, blocking straight ahead, creating displacement on the line of scrimmage. He's got really strong hands, a good first punch. He's a smart football player as well. I think you see a lot of good moments where he walls off blitzes and works with his teammates and has good timing and stuff like that. So I really like him, like you said, in that 3rd and 4th round range. But to me, he would be a guard. He's not really a player that I would even try at tackle. Like he would come in and he would be a guard from day one. But I think I think he'd be a solid pick at 98 or whatever that first 4th round pick is. I think like 116 maybe or 135. That might be the second one. But yeah, I mean, I think he would be a really nice physical presence for them.
All right. Any sleepers that you think might be guys for flying under the radar or anybody I didn't mention? I mean, there's so many names, but anyone I didn't mention, you think, you know what, 3rd round or 4th round, 5th round might be a good pick, or any sleepers for late 6th round, not 6th round, from Miami, round 7 where they got 3 picks.
Yeah, so I'll highlight a few guys that I have rated as tackles. So these are not players that I think will convert into guard. The first one is Chase Lunt from UConn. Not a player that we've seen a lot of in the pre-draft process. He hasn't done much, but this is a outside zone tackle. This is a good movement skills player, has really good length, can make reach blocks. You need to teach him how to pass protect. The pass protection is not good. The technique's bad. He doesn't handle strength well. He's a day 3 player. You have to teach him that. Another name I'll bring up is Jalen Travis from Iowa State. He transferred from Princeton this past season. I think he has the movement skills. I think he has the power. The run blocking flashes are really, really nice. He's a physical player. His pass protection is better than Lunt's. So I think you're starting a little bit higher, but you still need a lot of work there. He doesn't time his punches well. His sets are a little off. He oversets or underset. I don't know that he handles power, but he's got a ton of tools, can really do a lot of good things for you. I think he just needs some development. The biggest big sleeper that I'll bring up is Carson Vincent from Alabama A&M. I saw him at the Senior Bowl. I was super impressed with his body coming out of Alabama A&M. Dude looked like he was ready to play NFL football. He was strong. He was long. He, was moving really, really well. So he would be like a round 7, round 6 guy. I actually have a 4th round grade on him. It wouldn't shock me if he goes a little bit higher than that. I think he's got a lot of potential, but again, you're working with a developmental player. You're working with a guy who played at Alabama A&M. You got to teach him how to be better with his hands. You got to teach him to frame blocks better. But for me, when I'm looking at sleepers at tackle, The question I have to ask myself is, do you have the tools? Do you have the athleticism and the size to where, okay, if I can get you to be 40% better with your hands, you're a baseline NFL starter, because that's a huge win for a day 3 player. And so those would be the 3 guys that really stick out to me. And I like all 3 of them. I think all 3 of them are worthwhile, good prospects. I have 4th round grades on all 3 of those guys. I don't know that all of them are going to go in the 4th round, but I like them. I think all 3 of those guys have a really good chance to be like solid NFL tackles.
All right, let's move on to guard center. I'm going to combine them because most of these guys, not all, but most can do a little bit of both, or some. It's just easier. Tyler Booker, is he your number 1 rated offensive guard? And is 13 too high to take him? And is he even a scheme fit for Miami?
That is a lot of questions. So I'm going to say
3 and 1.
Let's do no, he's not my top rated guard. No, he's not worth the 13th overall pick. Is he a scheme fit for Miami? I think if the Dolphins drafted him, he would survive in an outside zone scheme. I think he'd be fine. I don't think he'd be a liability. I think the question is, are you doing him a disservice by forcing him to play that brand of football? Are you getting the most out of that player by asking him to play in an outside zone scheme? And no, I don't think that you are. And so I think if you're the Dolphins, me personally, I would just prefer to get a player who
scheme fit
is more of a scheme fit, right? It's not that Tyler Booker can't play in an outside zone scheme. I know there are people on Twitter doing all this work to be like, Tyler Booker can play an outside zone scheme. To me, it's not really about can he do it. Again, it's about should he be in an outside zone scheme? Is that the best use of that player? To me, the answer is unequivocally no. And I think it's even more no when you talk about him as the 13th overall pick in the draft. I am not taking a dude at 13 and playing him in a scheme that is not going to help him reach the best version of himself. Set aside whether I think Tyler Booker's worth the 13th overall pick in a vacuum, which I do not. But even if he was, I don't think he'd be worth the 13th overall pick to Miami specifically. If they take him at 48, I'm great. Sign me up. That's fine. Like, that's a plug-and-play guard. He's average. Maybe he incentivizes you to run more diverse run concepts, which I could do an hour on why they should do that, because it's insanity that they don't. But not at 13. At 48, yeah, we can talk about whether or not, we'll run some more duo and we'll get a couple of.
Well, that's my next question.
Right.
Do you think he's going to fall to round 2, or is he a no doubt round 1 guy?
I'd be surprised if he fell to round 2, but I don't think it's impossible. Like, I would put
I'm with you. I don't think he'll fall to Miami in round 2, but I think he could fall to one of the first 5 or 6 picks in round 2. Absolutely.
I agree. I would say I'm like probably 75% he's a first round pick, but I do think there's a decent chance that he falls just because he plays guard. I don't know that the league's going to value that overly high. And I like Tyler Booker's film. He's a top 40 player for me in this class overall, but he's not like an elite guard prospect. Like, he's a good guard prospect. And I think elite guard prospects go in the first round. Good guard prospects go in the top 50. There's a little bit more leeway. So I could see him slipping.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you said the Chiefs at 31. I think Seattle at 18. Their offensive line is even worse than Miami's, which is almost amazing. I think those are teams that might be in play from round 1. I could always see the Ravens. He looks like he could be like a Raven guy. I don't know if offensive line's a huge need for them right now, but those are teams I could see looking for an offensive lineman like him. Gray Zabel, we said guard, which we all agree. Although I know in college he did play, I think, mostly offensive tackle. I think.
Yeah.
Is he a guy pick 48 you think will be there? Do you like him at pick 48 for Miami, or is he going to go round 1, first part of round 2, and not even sniff pick 48?
I don't think he sniffs pick 48. I just think he's had too good of a process, and the tape backs it up. So I said Tyler Booker wasn't my top-rated interior player. Gray Zabel is behind Will Campbell, if you want to call him a tackle.
Yeah.
Right. So like my top-rated interior player would be Will Campbell, Gray Zabel, Tyler Booker. That would be my top 3. If you want to bump Campbell out, then it's Zabel, Booker. So for me, Zabel is scheme diverse, athletic, has the size, killed the Senior Bowl, killed the Combine, great interview, good character reviews. The tape is great. This is a player who has just checked every single box. There are things that he can get better at on the field. I'm not saying he's a perfect prospect or anything like that, but as so far as if you build a profile that you can feel confident in as an evaluator, I am so confident that Gray Zabel is at worst going to be an adequate starting guard at the NFL level. I just have a hard time believing that he's going to bottom out, that he's going to bust. He has just checked every single box that I possibly could think of. And I think that probably gets him taken in the first round. I do. I think it's like 80-20. I think he could slip.
I'm with you.
I don't think he sniffs 48 though. Now, maybe in my dreams he sniffs 48.
Yeah, exactly.
If they don't take him at 48, I'm gonna be inconsolable. We're gonna do the post-draft show, and I'm gonna be inconsolable, Mike. They pass on him at 48.
I'm with you.
But I don't think he gets there, which there's a part of me that is okay with that, because then I don't have to worry about it. But
yeah, I'm with you. Now the next guy who we spoke about a little last week, because he was in my mock draft at pick 48. And if they take this guy at pick 48, if he falls there, which I don't think he will, but there's a chance, I think. I almost don't care what they do in round one, because I love this guy as a fit for Miami out of The Ohio State University, Donovan Jackson. Guard, can play a little tackle, but he's a guard at the end of the day. You put this guy at left guard or right, however they want to work that out. I don't even care. This guy to me is exactly what the Miami Dolphins need, why I wouldn't go offensive tackle in round one. And maybe if you got to move up 5 or 6 spots in round two, if he's not gone in round one, get a Donovan Jackson, because that's who I think is what the Dolphins should do. Get something else in round one, corner, lineman, go edge rusher. I don't care. Just Donovan Jackson round two. Where are you on him?
yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think for the Dolphins specifically, it's really appealing because it throws out all of the musical chairs that we had talked about at the top of the show. And the reason for that is because I have seen Donovan Jackson play guard with my own 2 eyeballs. And I have also seen him play tackle with my own. It's not a projection. I have tape that I can watch.
At a high level.
He played both positions. And I'll be honest, the tackle tape doesn't start off good, but if you watch him in the college football playoff, he looks good at tackle. There's a part of me that's maybe he's a tackle. He looked good, and I think
he's an emergency tackle, which is that's fine.
Yeah, it's a testament. Guard. It's a testament to his ability to legitimately play multiple positions. And so again, it's not a projection with him. I've seen him play guard. He's really athletic. He's powerful. I have some problems with his pass protection at guard. I think at times is a little bit inconsistent. I feel like there's some things that you can clean up there, but I think he'd be a really good selection at pick 48, and I don't think he gets to 98. So
no, he ain't getting a 98. It's mock draft. You take him with a grain of salt because everyone has an opinion. But I usually only check the people I trust. I'm not going to lie. I mean, these people who just, God bless them on social media, every day they're doing. No, God bless you. Have fun with it. But the ones I take seriously are the ones from the people I trust. Lance Zierlein, Mel Kiper, Jeremiah, that group. And I've seen him go anywhere from late round ones, like Ravens type stuff. And I've seen him go to pick 48 Miami. Pick 50 is the lowest. So I think 48 is a stretch. But again, we got 10 picks. You got 2 picks around 4, 2 picks around 5. If you got a part with one of those picks around 4, even the highest one, to move up 3 or 4 spots to make sure you get this kid, I am okay with that, because this is about getting guys who can contribute year one right away. It's not about just getting 10 guys to get 10 guys to say we got 10 guys. I want guys who can actually play. So if we got to lose a pick, even around 4 to get this guy, I'm fine with that. That to me is smart. Now, let's just run through 3 Georgia guys because they're all going to be picked. There's a lot of them here. Let's start with Tate Ratledge, who I think is probably the best of the bunch. You think he can make it to 48? You think he's gone by 48? Tate Ratledge, you think he's a fit for Miami? Pretty much talk Tate Ratledge.
Yeah, so I think Tate Ratledge will get to 48. I'd be pretty surprised if he goes before that. Ratledge is an aggressively boring watch in the best way possible.
That's he's what just boring works.
He's just very solid. There is not a single play on his tape where you're oh, but there's also no plays on his tape where you're oh God, it's just he's good. He's solid. He started in the SEC. He's intelligent. He's got the size that you want. He tested really well at the combine. I was shocked that he tested as well as he did. I didn't see that athlete on tape, so I don't know that I'd bank on that, but I think that tells you that he is a good athlete, right? I don't know if I bank on him being an elite one, but he's a good one. So I think I'd take Rowledge ranked inside my top 50 players in this class. I just think that he is really solid. I think he could start at guard for you for, 5 to 7 years, and you almost forget that he's on the team at certain points. Like, he's just going to be solid. He's never going to wow you. I don't know this is a player who goes to 3 to 4 Pro Bowls across his career or anything like that, but plug and play guard. He plays in year one. I think you'll be fine with his production, and he'll get better over time, and you'll be happy that you took him at 48.
Jared Wilson, center. I've seen out now, when it comes to center, I've seen him ranked top center. I know that's, but is he a pure center? Can he also play guard in a pinch? Where are you on Jared Wilson from Georgia?
To me, he's a pure center. I don't really have any interest in seeing him at guard. I don't think he's got the Edgar for that, right?
Okay.
Like, he's just not thick enough. Now, with that said, I have no desire to replace Aaron Brewer. I'm not saying that Aaron Brewer is going anywhere anytime soon. If you were to ask me who in this draft class would be a really good heir apparent to Aaron Brewer, if you were interested in moving off of him, which I would not advise, but hypothetically, it would be Jared Wilson. I think you look at the athleticism that he possesses is very, very similar to the athleticism that Aaron Brewer gives you in this Mike McDaniel run scheme. And so I would look at him as a really good fit for the Dolphins from a scheme POV, but I do not see him as a player who can play guard, and therefore I'd be pretty surprised if the Dolphins were interested in him unless they feel differently than me that he can play guard. And this is a player who has 1 year of starting experience at center. I'd be pretty surprised if they feel like, okay, we're going to change his position now after he only has 1 year of starting experience at center.
Last Georgia guy, Dylan Fairchild. Where you see him? Is he around 4 or 5-ish? You think he might go a little sooner than that?
I think he's a day 3 guy, probably round 4. Just because he has the Georgia pedigree. Honestly, I don't know. Like, I think you could argue the tape is worse than that, but it's not too much worse than that. I think this is a player with requisite NFL tools from an athleticism and size perspective. I just don't really see a consistent player. I see a player that struggles with pad level. Fairchild isn't always synced up in his punches. He had some really bad lapses against blitzes, and there's just like a lot you need to clean up. But if you can clean it up, I think he'll be a fine player for you. I think a lot of what you might get value out of him is probably teaching him to play all 3 interior spots as he goes, and you kind of use him as this like super utility piece on the interior, which is valuable. But I don't know that Dylan Fairchild's ever a player that I want starting for me in week 1. If he has to start a few games at different positions and he's kind of a fill-in guy, a plug-and-play guy, 8 to 9 starts if a guy gets injured, you can talk me into that. I don't really know that I see a player who I want as a long-term, consistent, every game starter.
Seth McLaughlin, Ohio State, seems, well, again, it's a center. It's not really a need for Miami, but for someone like him, if you're sitting there and the guy falls in your lap, I mean, you almost have to take him, and you just worry about all the other stuff later because it is offensive line help in one way, shape, or form, especially with the second string. Seems like a perfect scheme fit for what Miami likes to do. Would 98 be too high for him? You think he's more of a day 3 guy? What are your thoughts on Seth there?
For me, he would be a firm day 3 guy. I would not consider him at pick 98. I don't know that again, to me, he's another player where I don't know that you ever want him as your long-term starting center. I think he is a backup. I think you're going to have to teach him how to play guard and try to play him at all 3 spots as kind of a versatile player. I do agree that he's a good scheme fit. I think he has the athleticism that you want, but lacks the strength that I want. I don't know that he's as strong in pass pro. I don't know that he frames his blocks in the way that I think you need to. I think you've got a lot of developmental work to do with a player who has been I think he's a 3-year starter. I think he was a 2-year starter at Alabama. And then obviously he got hurt this past year. So now I have the injury concerns. So for me, McLaughlin is a day 3 player. And I'll be honest, I do think he's center only. I would be pretty skeptical about seeing him at guard. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I don't really see that as a natural transition for him, given what I've seen him do at center. So he would be tough for me to think that Miami's going to like him, but he is a scheme fit. So if he's sitting there in the 5th, the 6th, I mean, they don't have a 6th round pick, but one of their 3 or 4 7th round picks, whatever. I think it's 3. They have 3. They had
7th round picks. Yep.
3. They had 4, and then Cedric Wilson. Yeah, they lost one. So he's sitting there and they take him, I'm not going to be upset about it. He's a worthwhile flyer.
And it would be nice one of these years, because we've never really had this. Although with the re-signing of Liam, that probably doesn't matter this year, to have like a true backup center. It seems like when the center goes down, Miami's always scrambling. I guess now with Liam, he's got enough reps where you can say he's a backup center. I wouldn't say it, but I guess some people could, including our general manager. But yeah, so that's why I'm like, one of these guys are there around 5, around 7. It might be nice to have like a true center to be like your number 2 center. I don't know. Call me crazy. I'm just going to, let's run through some names. Just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Don't have to go long on some of these guys. Miles Frazier, LSU, more of a pass blocker than a run blocker, I think, but someone who you could probably coach up or so, right?
Yeah, I have him, or probably like he's someone I would target at 98. If he's there, I think he has some guard tackle flexibility. I like him better at guard though. Has the strength, has the athleticism, got to teach him how to use it.
A name that's talked about a lot, and I want to hear you on this. Willie Lampkin, North Carolina. Name's got a little bit of buzz, but some of it's positive buzz, some of it's negative buzz, it seems like.
Willie Lampkin's tough because his tape is good. His tape is like probably fringe top 50. The problem is that he is the lightest interior offensive lineman I have ever seen in my entire life. And I have a really difficult time thinking that is going to translate to the next level. And I think he's like 270 pounds, which is, if there was a such thing as a negative percentile, it would be that. He's 0th percentile in size, but you watch the dude play and he's just like a football player, man. And that's why he's got the buzz. I'll be frank. I think he probably is like a fullback at the NFL level. Like, I think he's like Patrick Ricard or something. Like that to me is where you can't play a 270-pound player on the interior against.
No, not in this league.
In the NFL. I'm sorry. I know the tape is good. And if the Dolphins take him, I would root so hard for that guy. It'd be awesome. But I don't see it. I'm not going to get there.
I'm with you. That's why I wanted to ask, because I've seen people all over the map. Like, this guy knows how to play the position. He's so smart. He does everything right. But then you hear the other side. He doesn't have the size. How can you start him? How can you play him? And it's like, it's going to be interesting. Which team takes a chance at him? It should be a team that's a winning team that can put him in the weight room for a year, like say the Eagles or something. It doesn't really need him right away. Put him in a weight room for a year. Hopefully he puts on some size, a little bit of muscle. Some people just can't. And that might be Willie Lampkin. I don't know. And then see where he is a year from now. Because if he does put on some size, he's going to be a really good player. Luke Kandra, Cincinnati.
Kandra's a player. He is my last interior offensive lineman watch. So I don't have a ton to say about Kandra outside of I think he has baseline traits to be a player that goes somewhere in the 3rd or 4th round. Like, that would probably be the range. So he would be like a pick 98, pick 115 guy, I think, off the top of my head, just kind of on a preliminary watch. I need to finish his report though.
Yeah. Any sleepers, anyone who you think, round 3, 4, 5 might be in play for Miami? Anyone that you want to highlight, talk about in any late round guys?
So I would look at Jonas Savania from Arizona. I put him in my most recent.
I forgot to mention him. Yes.
7-round mock. I don't know that he's quite a sleeper. I put him at pick 98. You can read that now, by the way, on Dolphins on SI. There's my plug for the week. And so I think he's got really nice power. He's a guy who played tackle at Arizona. I think he kicks inside the guard. Not a perfect scheme fit, but again, you can talk me into that. The lower 98, you take a player at 98, I think it's good value. So he's someone I would bring up. Another guy I would bring up is Caleb Rogers from Texas Tech. I have a 4th round grade on him. I think he is a guy who has played some tackle, has played some guard. I like the potential versatility. I like the scheme fit for the Dolphins. And then the last name I would bring up would probably be Marcus Mambao from Purdue, who played tackle. I think he's one of the best athletes at the offensive line position in this entire class, but I think you're, again, projecting him to guard. Frankly, I would project him to center. If you were asking me to filter my center rankings, Marcus Mambao would probably be my top overall center. I think that's where he should play at the next level. So I think that maybe takes him off the board for the Dolphins, but if they talk themselves into him at guard, I could see him being a really good scheme fit.
All right, we're going to fly through wide receivers because I don't think Miami's going to take one at 13 or
No.
48. And if they do, we're going to have a much larger conversation after the draft about who we're going to trade Tyreek Hill for. Because at that point, if they take one at 13 or 48, that is code for see ya, Tyreek. We have to wait till June 1st or later to trade you anyways, but it's happening at that point. But before we get to wide receivers real quick, shout out to everyone watching and listening at finheaven.com. Everyone go to finheaven.com. Shout out to everyone watching us live right now at the I Am a Miami Dolphins fan Facebook page run by Carlos Hernandez. Does great work. If you're on Facebook, be a part of that. And also wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it's YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, iHeartRadio, one of the other 100 platforms, subscribe to the podcast. We have shows leading up to the draft. We have shows like this once a week with Dante leading up to the draft and one after the draft as well. Okay, wide receiver. Let's just say it. They're not taking one at 13 or 48 unless, like I said, they have plans to move on from Tyreek, and then we'll talk about that more after the draft. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope so. Okay. I hope so.
Yeah, I know. I'm there with you. How many wide receivers, just not in depth so much with names, how many wide receivers think going round one? You would have to think the kid from Arizona, McMillan, Golden, you think Emeka from Ohio State and Luther Burden from Missouri also going round one?
Yeah, if I was a sports book, I would set the over-under at 2.5.
Okay. I think Emeka goes in round one. Luther Burden, I'm not so sure.
I think, yeah, it's tough. Like, I think McMillan's and Golden, I think, go. I'm not sure if it, because here's the thing. I think Emeka Ibuka is one of the 20 best players in this class.
I do too.
I think that dude rocks. He's not flashy. I don't know, like, in wide receiver this year, like, I don't know how many teams are going to talk themselves into him. They might go with a tight end instead. You know,
he went to Ohio State, so he gets the benefit of the doubt.
That's
Ohio
true.
State
He does.
And LSU just funnel wide receivers to the pros who have huge success.
That is true. And again, I think he should go in the first round, but I don't know that it's a cinch. And I kind of feel the same way about Burden. I think Burden's a first round caliber player, but I don't know that he goes in the first round.
I think he's a round two guy as well, actually, at the end of the day. All right. So look, if Miami takes a wide receiver from pick 98 on, I'd have no problem. Because again, pick 98, it's technically the end of round 3, but it's really the compensatory area, which is technically the start of round 4 in the common sense version world list. And if you take one at pick 98, once again, it's pick 98. You're really taking best player available. And if one falls in your lap, I cannot get mad because let's just be real too. A year from now, Tyreek Hill will not be here, and they're going to need wide receivers. So at pick 98, I wouldn't have a problem, or anything after 98. So let's talk about some guys who are probably in that window, pick 98 or later, as that's more realistic for Miami. I'm just going to throw out some names. Tell me if you think 98 works or if it's a little bit too early or whatever. Trey Harris, Ole Miss.
Yeah, 98 works. I think he's a really nice vertical threat.
Yep.
People are going to have him in the first round. I am not going to have him in the first round. But 98, sure. Yeah, no problem.
Jalen Noel, Iowa State.
If he's on the board at 98, I'll be like flabbergasted.
He should be gone by then, right?
Yeah, like he should go like top 50. That dude, his tape's awesome.
All right, Jalen Royals, Utah State.
I'd like him at 98 too. I think he gives you a bigger body, contested catch type player, solid route runner. He does not strike me as the type of player the Dolphins would be remotely interested in. I don't think he has enough juice for them, or at least this version. I think that my guess is they signed Nick Westbrook-Akine, and that's about as close as they're going to get to a wide receiver without juice. I like Royals 98. He might actually be my 98th overall player, which is kind of funny. So if they take him there, I'm not going to complain about it. It's good value. I just don't think that he's going to be their type.
Let's talk a guy who's all juice, who Mike McDaniel probably be jumping on the table at some point in this draft for. Isaiah Bond, Texas. If anybody has Miami Dolphins written over him, it's Isaiah Bond.
Yeah, Bond is a really frustrating evaluation because you see a player who frankly looks like Jalen Waddle a non-insignificant amount of the time. He's got that speed. He is that dynamic. The problem is you also see a lot of reps where he looks like, I don't know, like Tutu Atwell. And it's just like, dude, like, can you please lock in? Like, you're so much better than this. There are so many plays where he runs really sloppy routes or doesn't track the ball properly in the air or goes to high point of pass when he should cradle it and it gets intercepted and then he's standing there wondering why the throw was bad. And it's just like, dude, like, can you please just lock in? I'm begging you because you're so talented. I have no idea where Bond goes. Because from like a talent perspective, a talent perspective, he should be a top 50 pick. Like talent is top 50.
You're right.
The tape is like the 150th best player in the class. And Tutu got 10 million. We'll see who regrets that in 2 years. And Tutu's not even a bad player. I probably should have called him. He's perfectly fine. I don't know why I'm crapping on Tutu. I was just like the first small speed dude.
He got 10 million because they got
overpaid that popped into my head.
They gave him 10 million because they knew they were getting rid of Cooper Kupp. That's why he got 10 million.
Almost fine. It is what it is. But like, dude, Bond's tape is bad. Bond's tape is just like there are like 20 reps every game where it's just like, dude, can you please just be serious for like 10 seconds? And he's just like, no, I can't. And that's really frustrating because he's got all the talent in the world. The Alabama tape was great. He had an awesome opportunity at Texas, and he just didn't do anything with it.
That's
Very
the thing.
frustrating.
I didn't watch him every week at Texas, but Texas was in a lot of big games, so you watch the big games. And in the big games, there's always 1 or 2 times a game where he's making this huge, big impact play that like shifts the game in Texas's favor, and you're like, this guy's great. And then when you start doing more research, you dive in, you realize, yeah, those are kind of like the only plays they made all year. And like every other time, he's not like an every down type player because he's just not locked in type of deal. But look, that Texas offense, which is why so many people think Kelvin Banks to Miami. Texas, their offense this year ran a lot of what Miami does. They actually researched the Miami Dolphins and incorporated a lot of what the Miami Dolphins do. So if you're telling me Mike McDaniel, round 4, whatever, is like, we got to get Isaiah Bond, I wouldn't be shocked because, like I said, he has got Miami Dolphins written all over him. Speed first. We'll figure the rest out later.
If they spend a day 3 pick on him, I'm not going to be upset
that's
about
fine.
it. It's fine.
But if it's pick 98, I mean,
not great.
I wouldn't do. Okay, couple more names. Tez Johnson, Oregon.
I don't get it. I don't see it. I'm sorry. I should be more eloquent than that. But like, this is a player that like, I'll be honest, like he was one of the first receivers I watched this year because he accepted his Senior Bowl invite really early, which is usually an indicator to me that I can start watching that player and writing them up. So I did Tez Johnson's write-up in like December, and he was sitting at the bottom of my overall big board for like 2.5 months. Like I've just never been there. I just see a player who is so thin. You want to talk about a Tutu Atwell comp? This is the Tutu Atwell comp. This was much better of a comp. Like just so thin. He is smaller than Atwell. He's smaller than Tank Dell. He got a ton of manufactured touches in that Oregon offense. He has the ability to be a good route runner, but I see a player who wasn't asked to run that many routes at Oregon, so that's a big question mark. For me, Johnson falls into the I'll let somebody else take that chance category. I understand why people like him. I understand why he has fans. To me, I don't see a player who can hold up at the NFL level. And the tape, frankly, is just like not that good. Like when I watched Tank Dell, like Tank Dell's tape was great. That dude was a killer in Houston. Yeah. Did not see that from Tez Johnson. If you're going to be that thin, I need you to be that guy.
Someone in the chat, but I was going to ask anyways, who you saw tear it up at the Senior Bowl. Jack Beck, TCU.
Jack Beck rocks, dude. He's
a football player.
Yeah. He blocks his butt off. He runs through contact. I was impressed with his attention to detail as a route runner as well.
Is he fast enough for Mike McDaniel's liking, though?
I don't think so. No. I think if they hadn't signed Nick Westbrook-Akine, there would be so many receivers in this class I'd be banging the table for because they can block. Betch is one of those guys. I think he's an awesome physical catch point guy, and I do think he can separate. I don't think he's just like I'm going to win contested catches all day. He can separate as a route runner. He's got enough quickness, enough wiggle, but he's not the elite separator, speed guy, explosiveness out of breaks that the Dolphins typically gravitate toward.
Talk about some guys who might go around 3, 4, 5 that I didn't mention or might be sleepers. And one name I do want to mention real quick. Xavier Restrepo. Obviously, the speed, what he ran at the 40 at his pro day, wasn't good. Is it going to hurt him? Or are people just going to watch the tape and be like, I know what he ran. I also watched the tape, and the tape speaks for itself. Where are you on him?
It's a really difficult question. I have to.
That's what it comes down to. Tape.
Yeah, I have
what he
to release my final big board soon. And if you go back and look at my old big boards, which are up on my Substack, you'll see that Xavier Restrepo has, generally speaking, floated anywhere between about 50 to 75th overall on my board. So like a late second to early third round type of player. So I really like the tape. I think the tape's good. I think if you drafted him, you're getting on tape a starting NFL slot receiver who makes really difficult catches, runs good routes, and blocks his butt off. That said,
40 times speaks for itself too.
There is a difference between being slow and being prohibitively slow, right? So like if Xavier Restrepo ran a 4.68, that would be awful. That time stinks. But you can play at the NFL level if you're good at other stuff at 4.68. It's not going to be easy, but you can survive. You have met the threshold. You're on the wrong side. You're on the upper end. You're close to danger. 4.8, like even if it's like 4.78 or whatever, which I think is like the best time I saw him get. Most of the times I have him at 4.8, 4.83. Like, dude, you are slower than most tight ends. And you're 5'7", he's like 5'7", 212, or he might not be that thick, but he's a thick built player. But like, again, it's really tough. Like, what do you do with a player who runs prohibitively slow, but has really good tape? I'm going to be honest with you. I think he goes undrafted.
Really?
That like, if you ask me for a bold prediction, I'm not saying I think he should go undrafted. I'm saying
but he will.
I think he could go undrafted. That is a really bad time. It is a time that is worse than bad. Like you can have a bad time and survive. You can't have a time that makes me question whether or not you're an NFL caliber athlete. And so teams are going to look at that, and he probably fell off like at least 16 boards. 50% of boards just completely removed Xavier Restrepo. Now there could be 16 teams that are still interested in him as a day 3 player. I would have told you he had a chance to go in the top 50 before he ran his 40. And I think the other question that I would think about is,
why did he run so slow? Was it because he wasn't working out hard enough? Why?
That's the
question I have.
Why did you run?
Did he not put in the work to know this is a big deal here?
I have a hard time believing that he didn't put in the work because he's such a hard worker on the field.
Something going on.
So he either is that slow, which is a huge problem, or he's hurt. Which honestly, you never want to wish a guy's hurt, but
he kind of wishes he was hurt probably right now because he can say, "Look, it's that reason." That's why.
Yeah, I wish he had pulled his hamstring or so, like a very minor like tweak to his hamstring instead of running a 4.8. Because the film's good, but like, dude, you cannot be an NFL receiver and run a 4.8. So,
all right. Any sleepers or anyone else I didn't mention that you want to sort of talk about here? Because here's the deal. I know we flew through wide receivers. If they take one, we'll spend a lot of time on them. If they take one at 13 or 48, we're going to really have a conversation after on wide receivers. Trust me.
I think I'll bring 2 names to the table. I think Alec Ayumanor from Stanford is a guy that I would consider a pick 98 if he's on the board. I think he gives you really good physicality. He's an X-type receiver. He blocks his butt off. I think he's the best blocking receiver in this class. I think it's him and Jack Betch. I think Ayumanor is just a little bit better. So he would be a player I would consider. I don't know that the Dolphins are going to be interested in him, but I would consider him. And then the other name that I do think the Dolphins will be considering is Ty Felton from Maryland. Straight line speed guy, vertical player, can win in manufacturer touches. I'm not a huge Ty Felton guy. I have him rated in like the 4th, 5th round range, late round 4, early round 5. But that could be an area where the Dolphins are looking at a receiver anyway, just because they have so many picks on day 3. So I think Felton is a player that the Dolphins would actually gravitate toward.
Real quick, let me talk about Felton. Maryland is a team this past year I probably bet 3 times, and I probably lost every bet on them. I just couldn't get a read on them. And so at a certain point, I say to stop betting Maryland. And the reason I lost those bets is because every time I bet them, Felton was running down the field making a big play, scoring like a 50-yard touchdown, just doing something crazy. So every time I've seen him on TV, I've been cursing him out. But yes, I could see him. It'd be nice to actually root for him for once because I've rooted against him way too much in my life, losing bets. Okay, that's all for wide receivers. I will say I saw your mock draft. I'm not going to go through pick by pick because we sort of talked about it. What I liked about your mock, although I am with you on Grant at 13, I would do it. You would do it. I don't know if Chris Greer is going to do it, but I kind of hope he does, and throws everyone kind of a curveball. I like the draft. I like the kid from UCLA, the edge rusher, who I am not going to say his name in round 4 because I cannot pronounce his name. I liked him. Kyle McCord at 150. Living up here in Syracuse, obviously they got a few guys in this draft with Rondé Gadsden, Kyle McCord, LaQuinn Allen, the guy we're going to talk about next week, the edge rusher, Fidel. There's a lot of talk he ain't going to make it to 150. I don't know. I think let me say it this way. If he's on the board to pick 98 right now, I'd kind of be surprised. Now, we know in these drafts, quarterbacks get shot up the board.
There's your bold take of the show. I like it.
We know in these drafts, quarterbacks go flying up the board. And I think he is one, or everyone, I don't want to say everyone, but from like the smart people. When I say everyone, I'm talking about smart people, not your town drunk on social media. Is like everyone's on him to the point where I think there's going to be that whoa moment, not round 1, not round 2, but that early first part of round 3 on that Saturday, they're going to hear Kyle McCord's name get read. Everyone's going to go, whoa, didn't expect him to go this high. That type of deal. I just think too many people are onto him now, and I don't see him 150. And did you see, here's where we're going to close. Did you see the other report today from the Miami Herald? Again, I know they do this with multiple players, but not all of them.
Oh, they met with viewers, right? They met with viewers, yeah.
Took them out for dinner. Not everyone gets the dinner meeting, though, Dante. The dinner meeting means something. Now, maybe with quarterbacks, there's so much to talk about. Let's do it over some steaks. But Quinn Ewers, and if they take him, he ain't making it to 98 either. I think he's going round 2.
You think so?
I think, look, you and me think alike in that most of these quarterbacks shouldn't go in round 1, but they will. Like Dart, he's going to go in round 1. He might go top 10. He shouldn't, but he will. Or he might, I should say. But he's going round 1, I think. Round 2, I think Quinn Ewers goes. Now, his 3 years in college this past year wasn't his best, but the 2 years previously weren't bad. And I know he's got flaws in his game. I know he can throw the long ball, but he can't throw a short ball with all that much accuracy. I get it all. I get it. But I think there's going to be a team. Now, I don't think it's going to be Miami, but there might be a team who's probably going to take him Friday night. I don't know, round 2 or round 3. He ain't getting a 98. And if Miami
I think he gets the 98.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, I think he goes Friday night, though. Oh, no. Well, if you think he gets 98, then he might not go Friday night in your mind.
I don't think he's going to go in the first 2 days.
You don't think so? Again, I know we spoke about quarterbacks last week, and this is way long. So last question. So quarterbacks in front of him, you have obviously Ward, Sanders, Dart. You have.
Are these guys I have ranked before him, or guys I think are going to go before him?
Guys you think will go before him.
Okay, really guys I think will go before him. Ward, Sanders, Milroe, Dart, Shuck, McCord, Will Howard.
Oh, you got him after Will Howard. Okay.
Yeah, I would put them in the same bucket.
Yeah.
But like, I think about the 2022 quarterback class, and I remember a few guys. Kenny Pickett went in round 1, and he shouldn't have gone in round 1. Yeah. And then the NFL took a chill pill, right? The next 2 guys to come off the board were Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder, and there were a bunch of guys that people had slated as round 1, round 2, round 3 picks that went in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round. And I think that's going to be what happens this year. I think Ward and Sanders are going to go. I think Dart goes, and then people are going to take a chill pill. They're going to relax. And whoever takes Milroe is going to start the next waterfall.
That would be interesting, because if it goes that way, that means the first hour of Saturday, if you got guys like McCord and Quinn Ewers on the board, that's going to be chaos. I think you're going to see a bunch of teams be like, I can't believe they're still here on a not I can't believe, but they're still here on a Saturday. If I can get one of these on Saturday, let me try to get them now and get the hell out of here with this. So I think this is going to be interesting, because I know next year's class is better, but still quarterback at the end of the day, and these GMs can't help themselves.
There is a chance that I'm just a hater. Like there really is.
Look,
because I watched the tape and I hated it. I didn't like it.
I know. He wasn't good this past year. He wasn't good this past year. Like those fans in Texas wanted Arch Manning for a long, and they're not necessarily wrong. Like I'm not as big on Arch Manning now as like most people are, but I can see why they want him because you watch a few of these games with Quinn Ewers, it's like, what the frick am I watching? But the 2 years previously were really, really good, and I think you have to factor that in as well. But we spoke about quarterbacks last week. You want to hear us talk more about quarterbacks? Go find last week's show. Next week, defensive line, tackles. Probably have to spend a lot of time on that. Edge rushers as well. And I think linebackers, I'm not sure. But we'll spend a lot of time on defensive linemen, especially after the news today. Everyone, Be sure to follow Dante Colonelli on social media at Dante Colonelli. You can read some of his work here at our website at DolphinsTalk.com, 3013 for a little bit longer. And, of course, at I know you guys
Dolphins
changed
on SI.
Dolphins on SI.
I'm there. I remembered.
I will drill it in my head. I'm sorry. But everyone, thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again after a while. Folks, don't forget, we must put an end to highway profanity.